Season 3 of Dota Dragon's Blood is actually a great watch. But why do I say actually? Well, Season 2 was a total mess, and Season 3 is still a total mess, but such a beautiful one. But why is that, I hear you ask? At the core, it is a story about the dangers of utopian thinking and a commentary on progressivism, authoritarianism, extreme ideologies, and how ultimately the postmodern political actor in fact actually doesn't serve these ideologies, but rather they use them to advance their questionable agenda. Of course, this monstrosity of an analogy might be hard to grasp. You might even be skeptical of its relevance. But before elaboration, it has to be said, this is just one interpretation. And this is exactly the point of Dragon's Blood. Interpretation is key. Not in a Lynchian way, mind you. It's still a very traditional story at its core, but it comes with a lot of layers. So this video will have two segments. One about how they set the stage for the story, more of a technical analysis, and another about what the theme actually is and its subtextual relevance. Let's begin. So there's a lot to be said about this season. They let go of a lot of mini-plots, the giant scope, overly complex storytelling, didactically explaining lore, and side characters that didn't matter all that much. This is parallel to our characters in the story. A lot of the theme has to do with letting go. So you could almost say that the creators have the same arc as our heroes on a meta level. However, while this was all really beneficial, this is not why this season is better or interesting. And this is where the video about Season 2 gets turned on its head. Dragon's Blood has way too big of a fucking scope. Because what they did was they took all the problems of Season 2 and used it as fuel for this season. I mean, literally, they just tossed it all onto the fire.
These three in the furnace will ignite sequentially, make the fire burn hotter, kick up the boiler pressure, and make the train go faster.
This of course doesn't excuse the pacing and plot of Season 2. If anything, this makes critiques of it even more justified, but this video is not about that. It's about how exactly they used it to their advantage. And to understand that, we need to talk briefly about soft world building, and why it helps so much in this case. Soft world building is a method that uses very little carefully placed information to let the audience peek into the world of the narrative and keeps them guessing about the rules by which it operates. For a good example, you need to look no further than Hayao Miyazaki's work that we took a close look at in a previous video, and almost inexplicably never uttered the words soft world building, but the concept being danced around is exactly that. The amount of story elements that Miyazaki throws in without interpreting it for us is through the roof. When done right, this way of telling a story is enigmatic, exciting, and inspires curiosity and the use of your imagination. Unlike hard world building, it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't even create great systems in the fantasy world. Or, if it does, that's only for the author to know. Dota 2, the game Dragon's Blood was based on, and Dark Souls, for example, are video games that use this technique as well. The gaps in your knowledge of the world are not mistakes. They are designed to inspire you. But what is the fail state for both of these kinds of world building? How can you mess these up while creating a universe? As one can fail at hard world building by making logical errors and contradictions, one can also fail at soft world building by leaving too little or too much room for interpretation. It's a delicate balance, and one that Season 2 could not strike in the slightest. It was overwhelming and gave our brains too many puzzle pieces to work with. It wasn't inspiring, it was confusing. In Season 3, this was used to its advantage to great effect. The audience's lack of understanding is rewarded, and all of the things you couldn't make sense of, questioned, or left wondering about are now irrelevant, and you can see how the fabric of Dota's world gets torn to pieces. Season 3 introduces the currently mega trendy concept of a multiverse, and it cleverly keeps the scope tight by having the Invoker collapse all realities into one. It renders all that we knew or were confused about irrelevant.
Now imagine the world as you would have it be. But first, you must let go of this one.
I don't understand.
Let go of all hope for it. Just wish it away.
We don't see the implications of battles won and lost, characters gone, or even world-changing events taking place. It was all for nothing. And arguably, this could have been done in a very intellectually stimulating way, like a science fiction movie, where we get shown how character X is different in the new world, and how some things never change, no matter the reality. But we didn't get that, as that doesn't really fit this soft world building we were talking about. The stories these kinds of worlds host are often character-based and deeply intimate. So what we got instead is a story about how an idea of the perfect world, paired with absolute power, can bring devastation to all things. And this is where our analogy starts. An authoritarian extremist making his utopia into everyone's dystopia.
Do not mourn the passing of the old world. Embrace instead the coming of the new.
So in this second segment, we will talk about theme and the more profound underlying message of this season. The reason season 1 of this show was exceptional is its strong commentary on religion and tradition. How 1,000 years of consistent suggestion can not only start a religion, but can use the mechanisms of its institutions for political gain. In very much the same way, season 3 has a significant religious undertone. The Invoker, the devil of the moon, the Antichrist, if you will, sacrifices not himself for the good of the world like Christ did, but sacrifices the world for his own goals. And so we get the dramatic question: does creation require destruction? Which is a very current topic. In today's political climate, this question is everywhere. From single countries like the US and its movement to defund the police, to worldwide phenomena like the critique and deconstruction of capitalism, all point to this very question. It's a question of building systems from nothing instead of dealing with the shortcomings of the systems we already have in place. It's not iteration, it's deconstruction. It's postmodern idealism. And while Dota Dragon's Blood may look like just a fantasy anime, it touches this question at its essence. In the beginning, the Invoker definitely believes in deconstruction, although in his mind this is all personal because his daughter Philomena has a fatal sickness, and he doesn't want to lose her. However, it's not hard to identify the underlying philosophical question. He doesn't present his utopia in a subtle way either.
You will all awaken to a better world.
The Invoker calls these worlds experiments. He's distanced from them, quite literally in his ivory tower, looking at the results, while causing immeasurable pain to everyone else. He is sheltered from the filth of the world and the lives he ruins, and if that is not a perfect analogy for authoritarian ideological leaders in our own world, I don't know what is. He even admits to his fascistic methods and speaks like a true postmodern dictator, almost as if he was referring to the way these things went on planet Earth in the 20th century.
The original process was somewhat more complicated and needlessly violent.
Today's extreme ideologies prey on consumer culture, and they are way less violent than they used to be, which doesn't diminish the damage dealt by them, if you not only count lives but the freedom of mind and culture. Today's battles are fought in comment sections, and the ones actually most affected are not the ones carrying the torch of these virtual revolutions. Much in the same way, in Dragon's Blood, gods and the selected few heroes play their game while the people suffer. And analogous to our own world, a delicate balance is upset every time someone comes along to fix the world. The utopia is a lie. The division of mankind is catalyzed by the social engineering of those in power. Dire and Radiant are reminiscent of our own cultural division, almost as if the primordial mind was our collective unconscious, and these two parts of it were nothing but a fragmentation of it by unnatural means, almost like the plan was to drive us against each other all along.
On the other hand, all of this is his design. This reality. It may be this is exactly what he wants. It may be that this nightmare is also his design.
Like the broken moon symbolized the Weimarization of our society, and the machine the Invoker uses was politics itself. His method of destroying the dragon souls symbolizes the destruction of the system, while Philomena's method is merely using them to give power to the machine, a bit like democracy. In this analogy, the dragon souls are the primal emotions of voters, and the choice to cannibalize them or channel them more gently.
My father used the pillars of creation to remake the universe. I believe we can set them to a more subtle purpose, restoring the structural integrity of the broken moon.
The antithesis to extremism is Philomena's character. The girl who is born with a death sentence truly understands that there is no such thing as a perfect solution, and answers the dramatic question with no room for doubt. She fights not to stay in control, but to better the world around her. She teaches us that the imperfections of the systems we build are inevitable.
He wanted to build a perfect world for you because he doesn't see there can be no such thing.
This disease is a part of me. We can't just wish it away. I will die, Papa. No one can change that. Not even you can change that.
Philomena understood from a young age, perfection is not a realistic vision. If the system breaks, no imperfect person will be able to fix it. The act of fixing broken things tirelessly is the ultimate purpose one can strive for.
You sat with him, watched him work. You wanted to understand it so you could fix the house should it ever break.
It's beautiful. I still have it. Nothing is beyond repair.
She believes that the things they have may not be without fault, but it is the best they have. It is all they have, something extremists like her father will never accept.
You facilitated the inevitable, as though the world were a sick animal to be put out of her misery. I see you now. You are so afraid of being wrong, you won't even try to do what's right.
And this is where the Invoker's character arc goes. He goes from the denial of this fact.
You think I'm a monster, I know. But you would have done the same. Anyone would have done the same.
To ultimately letting go. But how is this fair to all those who suffered, all those who have been sacrificed for the greater good? How do they move on from tyranny?
It is so terribly unfair. But the world wasn't made to be fair. It was made for us to find each other in the dark and offer comfort while the nightmares pass.
The world wasn't made to be fair, but trying to fix it is the best we have. It is all we have. So in this way, Dragon's Blood Season 3 is a story about a dangerous utopian thinker coming to his senses. And the multiverse is a framework for his thought experiments, as the Invoker can actually manifest his thoughts into reality. The argument the show makes is against extremism and for centrism. Look, for some, the presented analogy may be appealing, but for others it might be a colossal stretch, and that is fair. However, let me raise 2 points in contention. 1. The show's soft world building allows for a very interpretive look. There is a good reason we don't know much about the primordial mind, the Arc Warden, and how the structure of reality comes together. It helps the audience meditate on the meaning of this story, and this is but one interpretation. 2. The authors may not have had this argument in mind at all, but the zeitgeist inevitably always finds its way into culture, and that is where it draws inspiration from. In this way, the influence of it is not only possible, it is inevitable. And still, it might have meant something totally different to you. So I'm just curious what you thought. Is this reading too much into it, or not enough? Did the story touch you in some unique way? Let us know down below. See you next time. Quick shout out to anyone supporting Glance Value on Patreon, and especially Marv for being a creative director tier supporter. I really appreciate it, guys.